The markets of Vereen were always full of noise. Bright stalls lined the wide streets, each one filled with strange goods from faraway worlds. Spices that shimmered in the light, fruits that floated just above the table, and fabrics that changed color when touched. The air smelled of warm food and metal dust from the nearby shipyards. Traders shouted over one another, calling customers to their stalls. Ral moved through the crowd slowly, his eyes scanning everything. He was not here to buy food or trinkets. He was a bounty broker, someone who made deals between hunters and clients. His job was to connect the right hunter with the right target for the right price. It was a dangerous job if you were careless, but Ral was careful. He always listened more than he spoke. As he walked past a stall selling carved metal charms, he heard something that made him stop. Two hooded traders were speaking in low voices, their faces almost hidden in the shadow of their hoods. "Did you hear about the human on Tareen's Edge?" one of them said. The other trader shook his head. "No, I do not want to hear about humans. Even the assassins say no when the job is about them." Ral's ears twitched at the word. Humans. He had heard the name before, but only in passing. A small, young species from a blue and white planet somewhere in the outer spiral. Nothing about them had seemed special in the reports he had read. They did not have advanced ships. They did not control big fleets. They were not the largest or fastest or strongest. So why would assassins refuse to hunt them? The first trader leaned closer to his friend. "Do you remember the Blood Guild? They took a contract on a human last year. The best of them went after him. Not one returned. The guild burned their own records of that mission," the second trader hissed softly. "It is not worth speaking of. There are things that should be left alone. Humans are one of them." Ral pretended to look at the charms on the stall, but his attention was fixed on their words. The tone in their voices was not casual. It was fear. Not the loud fear of someone in danger now, but the deep fear of something that had been learned, the hard way. When the traders moved away, Ral followed at a distance. He wanted to hear more, but they turned into a narrow side street that was crowded with unloading crates. He decided not to risk being noticed. Instead, he went to one of his usual meeting places, a small drink shop on the edge of the market. The shopkeeper knew him and poured his usual cup without asking. As he sipped, he thought about the name, humans. The more he thought about it, the more it bothered him. If they were so dangerous, why had he never heard the full story? If they were so feared, why had no client ever offered him a bounty for one before? He did not have to wait long for an answer. A tall figure in a fine coat entered the shop and looked around. His clothing marked him as a man of wealth. When his eyes found Ral, he walked over without hesitation. "You are Ral the broker?" the man asked. Ral nodded. "Who wants to know?" "My name is Sarek. I have a job for you." The man's voice was calm, but there was something hard in his eyes. He sat down without being invited and leaned closer. "I am looking for someone. A human." Ral hid his surprise behind a slow sip from his cup. "A human, you say?" "Yes. His name is Daniel. He is somewhere on Tareen's Edge. He has something that belongs to me. I want him alive." Ral set his cup down. "Alive jobs are more difficult, especially if what I hear about humans is true." Sarek smiled thinly. "That is why I came to you. You are careful. You choose the right hunters. The pay will match the risk." He placed a small chip on the table. Ral tapped it, and the numbers appeared in the air between them. His eyes widened slightly. The reward was large, very large. The kind of money that could buy a new ship or a small property on a safe world. When Sarek left, Ral sat back and let the offer settle in his mind. The words of the traders echoed in his ears. Even the assassins say no. But Sarek's payment was tempting. He told himself it was just another job. Find the target, pass the information to the hunter, collect his share. That was all. yet deep. Inside, he felt the first shadow of unease. He had a rule in his work: never ignore the warning signs. And when an entire galaxy of killers and hunters refused a job, that was more than a warning. That was a wall. But curiosity was a powerful thing, and Ral had just stepped too close to the edge of it. Ral did not start the hunt right away. He had learned long ago that rushing into a job without understanding it was the fastest way to fail. Instead, he decided to speak to someone who might know more about humans. The name that came to mind was Zura. Zura was an old alien tracker who lived on the edge of Virine's lower docks. He was once famous for chasing targets across 3 sectors. Ral had heard many stories about him, but in recent years, Zura kept to himself. He rarely took jobs anymore. Rumor said his last hunt had changed him forever. The lower docks were nothing like the bright markets. Here, the air smelled of rust and fuel. The streets were narrow, and the lights flickered above broken walkways. Ral found Zura's workshop at the end of a small alley. The door was made from an old cargo hatch, and the walls were patched with metal plates from different ships. Ral knocked. For a moment there was no sound. Then the door opened slowly, revealing a tall, thin figure with pale skin and tired eyes. Zura looked older than Ral remembered, his shoulders bent and his hands covered in fine scars. "Ral," Zura said in a rough voice, "you only come here when you want something." Ral smiled politely. "And you only open the door when you already know who it is. May I come in?" Zura stepped aside. The inside of the workshop was filled with tools, parts, and broken equipment. Old tracking drones sat on shelves, their metal bodies covered in dust. A large table in the center held a half-repaired scanner. Ral looked around. "Still working. With your hands, I see." "It keeps me busy," Zura said, sitting down in a chair near the table. "Now tell me why you are here." Ral lowered his voice. "I need information about humans." The change in Zura's face was instant. His eyes narrowed and his hands stilled on the table. For a long moment he said nothing. "You heard the stories," Zura finally said. "I heard whispers," Ral replied. "But whispers are not facts. I have been offered a job, a human on Tarine's edge. His name is Daniel." Zura leaned back in his chair and let out a slow breath. "Then you are either very brave or very foolish." Ral tried to keep his tone light. "I am only the broker. I do not chase targets myself. But I need to understand why so many hunters refuse." Zura stood and walked to a shelf in the corner. He picked up a small metal box and set it on the table. Inside were old tracking, chips and fragments of data cards. He took out one and placed it in front of Ral. "That," Zura said, "is all that is left of my last job, the job that ended my career." Ral looked at the small piece of metal. "Was it a human?" "Yes," Zura said quietly. "A man. I never learned his name. The contract was simple: capture him alive. I had a team of 6, each one skilled and experienced. We planned every step, every move. It should have been easy." He paused, his eyes fixed on something far away in his memory. "It was not easy. It was not even possible. He did not have weapons, not the kind we carried. But he used everything around him as if it was part of him. Doors, shadows, broken, machines. He turned the ground under our feet into a trap. By the time I realized what was happening, half my team was gone. The others vanished one by one." Ral listened closely. "How did you survive?" Zura gave a humorless smile. "I did not survive. Not the way I was before. He caught me. He could have ended me right there. Instead, he let me go. He said, 'Go home. Tell them not to follow.' I ran and never went back." Ral felt a chill. "And you never took another job like it?" "I never took another job at all," Zura said firmly. "There are many dangerous beings in this galaxy, Ral. But humans are not dangerous because of their strength or weapons. They are dangerous because they do not give up. They will fight with whatever they have, and they will not stop until they win. When you hunt them, you are no longer the hunter. Ral sat in silence for a moment, his mind weighing Zura's words against the reward Sarek had offered. You say all this, yet the pay is enough to change a life. Zura's eyes hardened. Then let it change someone else's life, not yours. If you take this job, Ral, you will see what I mean. And when you do, it will be too late to walk away. Ral left the workshop with the old tracker's warning in his ears. The streets of the lower docks felt colder than before. But even with the warning, the thought of that massive reward still burned in his mind. Curiosity was winning. Ral sat at his desk in his small office above the Vereen markets. The walls were covered with maps of different worlds, notes about clients, and a few old photos of hunters he had worked with in the past. Outside the window, he could see the movement of the market below, the bright stalls and the steady flow of people. But his mind was far from the market. Sarek's offer sat like a weight in his thoughts. The old tracker's warning was fresh in his mind, yet the numbers Sarek had shown him were hard to ignore. Ral had brokered many jobs in his life, but none had offered so much for one target. He tapped the table slowly, then reached for his comm device. If he was going to take this job, he would need hunters. The best ones. The careful ones. The first call he made was to Breen, a skilled trapper who had worked for him on dangerous contracts before. Breen's voice came through the device, rough and tired. "What's the target?" Breen asked. Ral hesitated for only a moment. "A human. His name is Daniel. Location is Terreen's Edge." There was a pause. Then Breen let out a short, dry laugh. "Not for any price. Find someone else." The line went dead. Ral frowned and made another call, this time to Mira, a sharp-eyed sniper who had never failed a mission. When she heard the word human, she answered in a single sentence. "I am not dying for your commission." She hung up before he could speak again. One by one, the calls went the same way. Some hunters laughed, some cursed, some simply ended the call. Ral felt frustration building inside him. It was as if the word human was a locked door no one wanted to touch. Finally, he reached someone who did not refuse right away. His name was Torin, a quiet and steady mercenary who had worked with Ral twice before. "I've heard the stories," Torin said slowly. "If we take this job, we need to be smart, no rushing, no mistakes." Ral felt a small relief. "You'll take it." "I'll take it," Torin said. "But I want double my usual share." Ral agreed. With Torin on board, he needed 2 more to complete the crew. He found them in the lower levels of Vereen's docks. Kess, a tech expert, who could break into almost any system, and Dran, a pilot who could land a ship in the smallest space possible. Both of them hesitated when they heard the target was human, but Torin's steady presence and the size of the reward convinced them. 2 days later, they met in a quiet corner of the docking ring, away from curious eyes. Ral spread a holomap on the table in front of them. "This," he said, pointing to a glowing dot, "is Terreen's Edge, a mining colony in the outer belt. The human is there. We go in quietly, we find him, and we bring him back alive." Kess frowned. "Alive makes this harder. Why not just take what he has and leave him?" "Because the client wants him alive," Ral said firmly. "And the client is paying enough to make it worth the trouble." Dran leaned back in his chair. "I have been to Terreen's Edge before. It is not a friendly place for strangers. The locals do not like questions. If we go in looking for trouble, we will find it fast." Torin studied the map. "Then we don't go in looking for trouble. We find him quietly and move before anyone notices." Ral nodded. "Exactly. We keep our eyes open. If we see any sign that the stories about humans are true, we leave. No payment is worth losing the whole crew." The crew agreed, though Ral could see in their faces that they did not fully believe they could walk away from such a large reward. That night, Ral sent a coded message to Serek. "Crew is ready. We leave tomorrow." The reply came quickly. "Do not fail. And remember, he must be alive." Early the next morning, they boarded Dran's ship, a small but fast transport with hidden compartments and reinforced hull plates. As they lifted off from Vereen, Ral stood by the window, watching the planet grow smaller. The journey to Tarine's edge would take 3 days. 3 days to prepare, to plan, and to think about the old tracker's warning. Zura's voice still echoed in his mind. "When you hunt them, you are no longer the hunter." Ral tried to push the thought away. He told himself this was just another job, just another target. But deep inside, the unease was still there. Quiet, but strong. And somewhere out on Tarine's edge, a human named Daniel was waiting, whether he knew it or not. The ship dropped out of faster-than-light travel, and Tarine's edge appeared on the viewing screen. It was a rough-looking world, dry land broken by deep cracks with clusters of metal buildings huddled together near the mines. Dust storms moved slowly across the surface, hiding some of the smaller settlements from view. Dran guided the ship toward the landing zone with steady hands. "This is not a place that welcomes visitors," he said. "Keep your heads down and no one will notice us." They landed on the far side of the colony's main hub. The air outside was hot and dry, carrying the sharp scent of the mining chemicals. The streets were narrow, built from packed metal sheets, and the walls of the buildings were stained with rust. People here moved with purpose, eyes forward, as if they had no time for strangers. Ral led the crew through the streets, blending into the flow of miners and traders. Kes kept scanning for signs of their target, her small device hidden in her sleeve. Torin walked behind, watching every corner, while Dran stayed close to the group. After an hour of moving through the settlement, Kes gave a small nod. "I have him. Repair shop, 3rd block ahead." The building was low and square, with a faded sign above the door. The sound of tools came from inside. Ral stepped in first. The air inside was cooler, filled with the scent of machine oil. Shelves lined the walls, stacked with gears, wires, and small engines. At a workbench in the corner stood a man with short dark hair, sleeves rolled up, working on a damaged drone. He looked up when they entered. His eyes were calm, steady, and sharp. "You're new here," the man said. His voice was quiet, but carried a certain weight. Ral stepped forward. "We're looking for someone. Are you Daniel?" The man didn't answer right away. He set down his tool, wiped his hands on a cloth, and studied them one by one. "That depends." "Who wants to know?" Ral kept his tone even. "Someone who is willing to pay a lot for you to come with us. Alive." Daniel's expression didn't change, but his gaze seemed to deepen. "And if I say no," Torin shifted slightly, his hand brushing the side of his jacket. But before he could move further, Daniel's hand darted out, not toward a weapon, but toward the drone on his table. With one smooth motion, he pressed a hidden control, and a panel in the floor snapped open. A small device rose up from the opening, releasing a burst of light that made the crew blink. When their vision cleared, Torin's weapon was gone, lying neatly on the workbench next to Daniel. Ral felt a sharp wave of surprise. Daniel hadn't moved fast in the usual way. He had moved with complete timing, as if he knew exactly what would happen before it did. "I don't want trouble," Daniel said, placing the weapon carefully on the table. "But I won't run. Either. You can tell your employer that." Kes took a step forward. "You knew we were coming." Daniel gave a small shrug. "This colony has a way of telling me when strangers arrive, and you didn't exactly blend in." Ral kept his voice calm. "We have a job to do, but I also have questions. Why does everyone seem afraid of your kind? Daniel met his eyes. Because when someone hunts us, we don't run the way they expect. We don't fight the way they expect. We don't think the way they expect. And by the time they understand, it's already too late for them. There was no anger in his voice, only a simple statement of fact. Torrin stepped closer to Raoul and spoke low. This man is dangerous. I can feel it. Raoul nodded slightly but didn't turn away from Daniel. You know someone will keep coming. If not us, then others. Daniel leaned against the workbench. Yes, but that's the mistake they make. The more they send, the more they lose. And eventually they stop sending anyone at all. The air in the room felt heavier. Outside, the sound of the dusty wind pressed against the thin walls. Raoul realized then that Zura had been right. This was no ordinary target. Daniel didn't. Just survive. He controlled the space around him. Every movement, every word was part of a larger plan. Still, Raoul wasn't ready to walk away. Not yet. We'll be in touch, Raoul said, stepping back toward the door. Daniel didn't stop them. He simply picked up the drone again and went back to work, as if they were no more than a passing distraction. But as they left the shop, Raoul couldn't shake the feeling that they had just stepped into a game they didn't understand, and that Daniel was already several moves ahead. After leaving the repair shop, Raoul and his crew stayed in a small inn on the edge of Tarine's Edge. The building was old but solid, with thick walls that kept the dust out. The crew sat around a table, drinking hot, bitter tea from small metal cups. No one spoke at first. Everyone was thinking about the encounter with Daniel. Torrin finally broke the silence. That man is not like anyone I have seen. How did he disarm us without a weapon? Kes shook her head. It was not speed or strength. It was timing and understanding. He predicted our actions before we made them. Dran leaned back and rubbed his eyes. And calm. He did not panic or shout. He did not try to fight us with anger. That is what makes him dangerous. He is always in control. Raoul remained quiet, thinking. We need to know why humans are so feared. Zura said it. Daniel himself showed it. But there is more we do not understand. We need the story from him, or we cannot finish this job. The same. Next morning, Raoul and his crew returned to Daniel's shop. This time, he did not appear surprised to see them. He leaned against his workbench, arms folded, and studied them carefully. I know why you are here, Daniel said. You want to understand, Raoul nodded. Yes, why are humans so dangerous? Why does the galaxy fear them so much? Daniel took a deep breath and began. A few years ago, my crew and I were exploring a remote system. We were small, only a few people. Our ship was not strong, our weapons were weak. But we discovered a hidden station controlled by raiders. They tried to take everything from us, supplies, data, even our freedom. Most crews would have fled. Most crews would have given up. He paused and looked at each of them. We did not. We used what we had. We studied the station, learned every weakness. We used shadows, tools, and the terrain to our advantage. We trapped their forces in ways they did not expect. One by one, we overcame them, and we did it without killing anyone more than necessary. Torrin's eyes widened. You were outnumbered. Yes, Daniel said, and weaker. But we adapted. We thought differently. Every move we made, we planned not only for ourselves, but for the mistakes of our enemies. They did not see it coming. They lost because they assumed we would act like they expected. Kes frowned. So the galaxy hears about this and fears humans because you survive impossible situations. Daniel nodded. It is more than survival. Humans learn quickly, and we work together in ways that confuse others. We turn disadvantages into advantages. A human who is hunted can use the environment, the tools, and even the enemy's own mistakes to survive, and we do not give up. That is what makes us dangerous. Ral leaned forward. So when Zura said hunting a human is impossible, he meant it. The human can always turn the hunt around. Yes, Daniel said. Hunting a human is not just dangerous, it is unpredictable. By the time someone understands what is happening, it is already too late. And those who fail tell others. That is why even assassins refuse the job. It is not fear of strength. It is fear of what they cannot control. Dran shook his head slowly. I have faced dangerous creatures before. I have fought in storms on planets no one could survive. But this is different. You do not just fight. You think. You use everything around you. Daniel smiled faintly. We do not plan to scare anyone. We just survive and adapt. The stories grow because those who tried to hunt us tell them. And the stories make others cautious. That is why you heard the whispers. That is why the assassins said no. Ral sat back, absorbing the explanation. The truth was far beyond what he had imagined. Humans were not just another species. They were clever, adaptive, and patient. They could turn a trap into an advantage and a threat into an opportunity. Kes finally spoke, her voice low. So what does this mean for our job? Daniel looked at them calmly. It means that if you continue, you must understand that this is not a normal hunt. You must think beyond weapons and numbers. You must respect what humans can do. And if you do not, you will fail. Ral nodded slowly. I understand. And I believe my crew understands. But I also see now that this is more than a job. This is a lesson in how dangerous it is to underestimate someone. Daniel returned to his workbench, picking up the drone. He had been repairing. I do not wish to fight anyone. I do not seek conflict. But I will protect myself and I will survive. That is all I need. The crew left the shop with a new understanding. They had faced skilled hunters and clever criminals before, but Daniel was different. His calm, his mind, and his ability to turn the impossible into possible were qualities they had never seen. Ral realized that the stories and warnings were not exaggerations. Humans were not just survivors. They were unpredictable, and that made hunting them a gamble. No one could win easily. As they walked back to the inn, the wind of Terrine's edge whipped around them. Ral felt the weight of the mission heavier than before. This was no ordinary target, and he knew the rest of the galaxy would soon learn why humans were feared. The next morning, Terrine's edge was quiet. Dust swirled across the streets, and the sun glinted off the metal buildings, making the colony look harsher than it really was. Ral and his crew stayed in their inn, discussing their next steps. They had seen Daniel's skill, and they knew this would not be an ordinary capture. Kes tapped her datapad. I am detecting unusual activity near the market. Someone is watching the streets. Torin frowned. Could be another hunter. The client is impatient. He might have sent reinforcements. Ral nodded. We cannot approach Daniel again without knowing what is coming. Let's prepare quietly and carefully. That afternoon, as they watched from a side alley, a small team of mercenaries arrived in hovercrafts. They were armed, confident, and moving fast. Kes quickly scanned their patterns. They are here to capture Daniel by force. They have no idea what they are walking into. Ral swallowed hard. The stories were true. The whispers were true. Daniel was not only capable, but prepared. Without warning, Daniel appeared on the street near the market, as if he had known they would come. He carried nothing but a small toolkit. His calm presence drew the eyes of the mercenaries, but they laughed, confident they could overpower him. Daniel did not run. He walked slowly, watching their movements. Then he moved toward a stack of crates beside a building. With a quick adjustment of his tools, a panel in the ground snapped open. Small devices rose from the opening, creating a barrier that redirected the mercenaries' hovercrafts. Torin and Ral watched in disbelief. He set traps without weapons, Torin whispered. Daniel did not strike anyone directly. Instead, he used the environment to his advantage. A pulley from the crates dropped a rope that tangled the front wheels of a hovercraft, stopping it completely. Another crate shifted slightly, sending a loud metallic clang that distracted the attackers. One by one, they became trapped or confused by the simple but clever mechanisms around them. Kess tapped her pad quickly. He is predicting their moves. They cannot understand what he is doing. The mercenaries grew frustrated. They tried to advance, but every step seemed to lead them into a new obstacle. They shouted orders, but Daniel remained calm, observing and adjusting. It was not a fight in the usual sense. It was a display of intelligence, patience, and planning. Ral felt a mix of awe and fear. The old tracker, Zura, had been right. Hunting a human was not only dangerous, it was unpredictable. Finally, Daniel stepped forward, hands raised, and spoke. "Stop. You are losing what you do not understand. Leave now, and I will let you go without harm." The lead mercenary hesitated, his pride and orders fighting against his survival instinct. Daniel's gaze did not waver. The calm certainty in his eyes made it clear he would not be defeated through force. Slowly, the mercenaries backed away, untangling themselves from the traps. Torin muttered, "I have never seen anything like this." "Not in all my years." Daniel turned to Ral's group. "This is not about violence. It is about survival. And sometimes, survival means using your mind instead of strength." Ral stepped closer. "You could have destroyed them." Daniel shook his head. "I do not need to. Sometimes letting them go is more powerful than defeating them." As the mercenaries retreated, Daniel adjusted the traps again, ensuring they could not follow easily. Then he walked back toward his repair shop, calm and unhurried. Ral realized the truth. Daniel had proven what the stories had hinted at. Humans were clever, adaptive, and always thinking several steps ahead. No matter how many hunters were sent, the outcome would likely be the same. They would fail or be forced to retreat. Torin nodded slowly. He is not just surviving. He is teaching them a lesson they will not forget. Kess added, and the galaxy will continue to fear humans because of it. The stories will grow with every encounter. Ral felt a new respect for Daniel. He had seen the target not as prey, but as a force of nature, unpredictable, patient, and clever. This was not a being to hunt lightly. Daniel returned to his shop, picking up his tools as if nothing had happened. The crew watched him silently, understanding that the human had changed their view of the galaxy. He had shown them that intelligence and creativity could be stronger than weapons, and that underestimating a human was a dangerous mistake. Ral knew now that completing the job would be more than capturing a target. It would require understanding, strategy, and respect. And perhaps the galaxy itself would never truly understand why humans were so feared. As the dust settled on the streets of Tarine's Edge, Ral and his crew left for the inn. The lesson was clear. Hunting a human was not just dangerous, it was a game they could not win if they relied only on strength and force. And Daniel, calm and quiet, had already won without raising a hand. The dust from Tarine's Edge had barely settled when Ral and his crew returned to the inn. The quiet streets outside seemed calmer now, but the tension inside the group remained. They had seen Daniel in action. They had witnessed the clever traps, the calm control, and the way he could turn an impossible situation into an advantage. Torin broke the silence. "We cannot hunt him. Not like this. Not with what we've seen." Kess nodded slowly. "He could have destroyed the mercenaries. He didn't. He could have left us trapped. He didn't. Everything he does shows he is different." Dran leaned back in his chair. "And yet, we are expected to take him to the client alive. After what we have seen, that is impossible." Ral stared at the floor, thinking. The reward Sarek had offered was enormous, enough to change their lives. But the warnings from Zura, the encounters with Daniel, and now the clear proof of his skill, all of it told a single truth. This was not a mission that could be completed by force or fear. Ral finally spoke. "We leave. We do not take the bounty. We will report back to Sarek, but we will not hunt Daniel. Not because we are afraid, but because it is the right choice. He is not a criminal. He is not dangerous to us. The danger is in misunderstanding him." Torin's eyes widened. "You mean, refuse the job?" "Yes," Ral said firmly. "I do not care what Sarek thinks. The moment we try to force a human into our control, the risk is too high. The reward is not worth it." Kess added, "And maybe this is why humans are respected and feared, not for their strength, but for their intelligence and patience." Dran nodded. "I never imagined a mission like this would teach us a lesson instead of ending in success or failure. But that is what has happened." That evening, Ral contacted Sarek with a simple message. "The target is alive. We are withdrawing. We will not continue the hunt." The reply came quickly. "You disappoint me. Return immediately or face consequences." Ral read the message and smiled faintly. "No," he whispered to himself. "Not every command is worth following." The next day, Ral and his crew returned to Daniel's repair shop. He was working quietly, unaware of the message that had passed between them and his client. Ral stepped forward. "Daniel, we are leaving. You are free. The client may still look for you, but we will not be part of it." Daniel looked up from his work and gave a small, calm smile. "I appreciate that. You could have forced me, but you chose not to. That tells me more than words ever could." Torin spoke quietly. "You could have defended yourself. You didn't need to. And yet we learned the most from your actions." Daniel nodded. "Humans are not just about survival. We are about understanding the situation, using what we have, and protecting those who do not deserve harm. The galaxy fears what it cannot control, but not all humans are enemies. Some, like you, can learn from it." Ral felt a wave of respect for the human standing before him. He had never expected a bounty to become a lesson in wisdom and courage, but Daniel had shown him that intelligence, calm thinking, and understanding were stronger than weapons and numbers. Before leaving Tarine's Edge, Ral addressed his crew. "We may not have collected the reward, but we gained something more valuable: experience, understanding, and the knowledge that there are beings in this galaxy far beyond our expectations." As they boarded Dran's ship, Daniel waved calmly. "Go safely. Tell the galaxy that not all humans are threats. Some simply survive, and in doing so, they teach." The engines roared as the ship lifted into the sky. Below, Tarine's Edge grew smaller, but the lesson lingered in their minds. Humans were clever, adaptive, patient, and unpredictable. The galaxy had reasons to fear them, but now Ral and his crew understood the deeper truth. To underestimate a human was not just foolish. It was a death sentence for pride, arrogance, or carelessness. Ral looked at his crew. "We will tell Sarek we did our duty as we saw it. The rest of the galaxy can learn from this story. Hunting a human is more than a mission. It is a lesson in respect, patience, and intelligence." The ship jumped into faster-than-light travel, leaving Tarine's Edge behind. The wind of the colony, the dust, and the small human who had taught them so much were gone from sight, but not from their minds. And somewhere, far across the galaxy, the story of Daniel, the human who could survive impossible odds, would grow, spreading whispers of respect and fear. Ral understood now why the assassins refused. Hunting humans was not just dangerous, it was unpredictable. And in a galaxy full of rules, unpredictability was the most dangerous thing of all. The crew leaned back, silent but thoughtful. They had survived the hunt without a fight. They had learned the value of intelligence over force. And they had witnessed the power of a species the galaxy had underestimated for far too long. The human had not fought them, and yet he had won.